Hi, I'm Lee Hall, and I want to welcome you to a series that I am starting on being a healthy professor, healthy academic, and living a well-rounded life. And there'll be a number of things that we'll be discussing and examining in this series. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is looking at really great, healthy recipes that you can make for yourself at home. These are not original recipes, so any recipe that you see featured on here is a recipe that I went out and found or that somebody referred to me. I tried it out. I might have made some modifications, and I'm presenting it here for you today. So today we have roasted tomatoes and quinoa. And this got started because I had a lot of goat cheese in the house. I had some leftover goat cheese, and I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And I found this quinoa dish and thought that I could add goat cheese to it and it would be great. And before we go further, I want to also say that these recipes that are going to be featured on here are going to be either vegetarian or vegan. So don't let that scare you. If you're interested in vegetarian and vegan cooking, you're going to learn a whole bunch of really easy ways to make that happen. Okay, so first things first, I started with the quinoa. Now, the picture you see here, I made this the night before. So I had this for dinner, and I liked it so much I turned around and had it for lunch the next day. The quinoa takes about 15 to 20 minutes to make, and I made a cup the night before. And so what you see here is half a cup, and half a cup for me was more than enough. So anyways, I dumped that quinoa in a bowl, heated it up in the microwave for about a minute, set it on the counter. Now, while I'm doing that, I'm roasting tomatoes and kale. Now, you might notice the title says roasted tomatoes. It doesn't say anything about kale, and kale is actually not even in the recipe ingredients list. But when I made this for dinner the night before, I made it without the kale, and I happened to have kale on hand, and I thought I can use my kale in this. It will be delicious. So I have red kale. I love to roast red kale, so I just chopped up some tomatoes, shredded a little bit of kale, threw it on the baking sheet, tossed it with a little bit of canola oil, stuck it in the oven. You can roast it at about 425. You can also put it under your broiler. I've done it both ways. Either way seems to work fine. Just keep an eye on it because it probably only needs 5 minutes on the kale, 5 to 10 minutes on the tomatoes. So keep an eye on it. All right. While your tomatoes and kale are roasting, fry your eggs, okay? So the first night that I did this, I just used one egg, and I didn't really find it to be super filling. So this time I used 2 eggs, and it's perfect because what I'm finding is, especially for lunch, is that I'm really not wanting to snack and munch on things. I feel very full, very satisfied, but not stuffed. I feel great. So, and I'm saying this about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours after having eaten lunch. So fry your eggs. I like mine kind of runny. Do them how you like. By the time your eggs are done, your kale and tomatoes is going to be done. And let me also add, you can fry your eggs however you want. I used Earth Balance, which is a vegan butter substitute for mine. It works beautifully. If you haven't used Earth Balance, it seems to be available in pretty much every grocery store nowadays. So I would recommend giving it a try. Now, what I've done here in this picture, the quinoa is on the bottom of the bowl, eggs are on the top, and then I threw in a little bit of kale and tomatoes just so you can get a sense of what it's looking like as I'm building up the dish. And then we've got the finished product. So now you can't even see the quinoa or the eggs, right? Like I've just totally dumped tomatoes and kale on top of it. And I've got a lot of goat cheese, it looks like, on here. But I was in a situation with the goat cheese where it was like not enough worth saving, so I might as well go ahead and use it. And I thought it looked like a lot, but when I got into eating it, it actually turned out to be just the perfect amount. So you could leave the goat cheese out of this. The recipe calls for Parmesan cheese, which I think would work well. You could also put feta cheese on here. Those are things that would work well. So I made this at home. With leftover quinoa for lunch, I would say it took me maybe half an hour at most to make. I was a little bit slow and pokey. If you're making the quinoa from scratch, it's probably going to take you in the neighborhood of 30 to 45 minutes, just depending on how you want to pace yourself. You can make the quinoa while the quinoa is cooking. You could, about 10, 15 minutes into that, you could start the tomatoes and the kale. So it's however you want to time it. But I would say 30-ish minutes or so to make it from scratch, starting with the quinoa. And of course, make yourself some extra quinoa. have this dish multiple times. It's really just an amazing dish. All right, so please feel free to contact me, and also feel free to make the dish. This recipe came from This Gal Cooks, and you can see the link here, thisgalcooks.com/roasted tomatoes with eggs quinoa. So highly recommend you check that out. This was something I just found on my own and made on my own to try. You can also feel free to email me, leahall39@gmail.com. And also don't forget to check out my website if you're interested in issues around teaching in higher education, leahall.wordpress.com.